Hey everybody, Josh Sigurdson, a World Alternative Media here, and they are killing Julian Assange. We've been talking about it for a few months now. It's been quite clear that he has been ill. He's been unable to even say his own name. He's been hardly able to speak. He's been crying and sobbing when he goes to court. This has been a warning for a while. He's obviously being poisoned and tortured. Anyway, I'm going to go into this article from the Daily Mail, which says, "The torture must stop now. A group of more than 100 doctors warn Julian Assange could die in jail and urge Australia to bring him home." As the article goes into, more than 100 doctors have urged Australia to lobby for imprisoned Wikileaks founder Julian Assange to be returned home for urgent medical treatment. The group has written an open letter to Foreign Minister Marise Payne calling for the 48-year-old to be returned to Australia. "Should Mr. Assange die in a British prison, people will want to know what you, Minister, did to prevent his death," the letter says. Assange is in Belmarsh Prison, a high-security London jail awaiting a full hearing in February, and you could see a few of the images there. As it continues, the Wikileaks founder is set to fight extradition to the U.S., where he faces 18 charges, including conspiring to commit computer intrusion. The doctors are gravely concerned, and Australian citizen survival could be endangered by a foreign government obstructing his health care. It is an even more serious matter for that citizen's own government to refuse to intervene against historical precedent and numerous converging lines of medical advice, the letter says. As it continues, the doctors agree with the United Nations Special Rapporteur on Torture Nils Melzer that Assange has been psychologically tortured. Diagnostic radiology specialist Stephen Frost said it was beyond belief doctors had to urge the Australian and UK governments to give treatment to a torture victim. "The torture must stop now, and Mr. Assange must be provided with immediate access to the health care which he so obviously needs before it's too late," Dr. Frost said. And you can see the famous image there. As it continues, Australian doctor and former Democrats NSW state politician Arthur Chesterfield Evans said it was chilling to see Assange's medical care being obstructed. "If Australia believes in the universal moral value of truth ahead of authoritarian regimes using fear and abusing legal process to silence journalists, it must act to protect Julian Assange, his life and his health," he said. In November, medics from Australia, the UK, Europe, and Sri Lanka wrote to British Home Secretary Priti Patel expressing serious concerns about Assange's health. More than 60 doctors wanted him transferred to a university teaching hospital, but the demands were rebuffed. Labour frontbencher Jim Chalmers said Assange's case was a fraught area, but was otherwise tight-lipped. "We want to see Mr. Assange treated in a humane way, in a way that respects international law," he told ABC Radio. Oh, great. ABC, you know, the guys that covered up pedophilia regarding Jeffrey Epstein for years at the request of the state, Clintons, and the British world order. I want to go into this a bit before we get into further articles, because there's more to go into here, but I want to note that the fact of the matter is this guy didn't do anything wrong. He was passing on information that exposed that people were being murdered, that there was corruption. I mean, that's what journalists are supposed to do, aren't they? They're given the information and they pass it on. It's facts that are pertinent to the people. But the media has become more and more about the government and promoting the government and promoting the establishment and standing for the establishment like a tin pot dictatorship or a banana republic. And that is where we should all be extremely concerned, because this has a lot more to do with free speech than it even does to do with journalism. Journalism is a factor of free speech and free information, but I think this has a lot more to do with how we're slowly seeing free speech dwindle off a cliff, and we will soon be left with absolutely nothing more than talking points that if we dare to break from, we will be executed in a firing line. That is the path we're walking down right now, and Assange is clearly being murdered right now. He's being clearly poisoned and tortured, and where is it in the news? We see this article, but for the most part, no one's talking about it. No one's talking about the fact that not only Epstein, Jeffrey Epstein and all that kind of stuff not killing himself, but also on top of that, we see this crazy story about a guy who was a journalist who's passing on information being murdered by a government, a Western government, first world government, quote unquote, and no one's doing anything about it. No one cares. What is wrong with us? What is wrong with our current civilization that we're in this position where we are just looking the other way like, oh, well, hopefully someone handles that. Or, oh, well, oh, that's quite negative. I don't want to hear about it. It's stuff like that. Oh, well, Trump's impeachment. All this bread and circuses nonsense. What's on TV? Let's carry on with another article here that I have in line here. Goes to like this Guardian article. Julian Assange's extradition fight could turn on reports he was spied on for CIA. You think? Allegations a security forum at the Ecuadorian embassy gave footage to CIA come as 100 doctors urge Australia to protect him. I mean, that shouldn't surprise anybody. Obviously, the CIA was spying on him. I mean, Assange released the CIA papers, Vault 7. I mean... Anyway, and he didn't risk anyone's life in doing this. Why is it okay to murder kids while laughing and joking from a drone, but it's not okay to share that information with the public? What kind of world do we live in where we have that kind of double standard? It's okay for journalists to cover up for a massive pedophile ring like we saw with ABC News Disney or with BBC and Jimmy Savile. But it's not okay to pass on information that shows that people murdered men, women, and children that were completely innocent, including other journalists, I should add. Reuters reporters. Carrying on as it shows here, this is inadvertently attached. Now, obviously, Assange and Snowden haven't always gotten along. But nonetheless, I find it interesting how a judge just ruled the government is entitled to Snowden book speech proceeds. So the government's just decided, you know what? That's our money. We're just going to go ahead and take that, if you don't mind. We're going to send revenue agencies after people in other countries demanding money because he wrote words on paper, and therefore, that's our money. People bought the book hoping to support Snowden, one of many NSA leakers, I might add. Whether you think he's a limited hangout or not, the point of the matter is he wrote a book, and the government is now at a point where we're so totalitarian where it's like, oh, they wrote a book, we're just going to take all your money and we're going to steal it from you. And this is just a fact of the matter that every human being in the United States has to face or elsewhere for that matter, anywhere in the world really, where government, this organized crime racket decides you can't speak, you can't talk, you can't think, and we're going to steal half of your living, so make you work as a slave, like a cattle on a farm for half a year to pay off the interest on the debt and blow up babies, which then people will catch on video and then give to WikiLeaks, and then Julian Assange will go to jail for. And Chelsea Manning, of course, as well, who refuses to testify, I might add. And this comes at the cusp of something else that this Zero Hedge article points out. Establishment journalists call for big tech to censor everyone else. And as the article goes into, in a major threat to what's left of press freedom, and the keyword is what's left, establishment journalists are calling for big tech to censor those who won't parrot the government-approved official narrative. Journalist Sulome Anderson has publicly called for censorship of a site because it's an independent news source. Anderson publicly requested that Google de-rank the independent news site The Gray Zone. Anderson, who, according to her bio on her Twitter page, has published with news outlets such as the Washington Post, Newsweek, New York Magazine, and Foreign Policy, labeled a recent article by Gray Zone contributor Rania Khalek as dangerous. For her part, Khalek called Anderson's comments to Google a dangerous threat to press freedom. Khalek's article, which Anderson specifically took aim at, is part of a two-piece investigation into alleged U.S. and Gulf state attempts to co-opt, influence the ongoing anti-corruption protests in Lebanon, according to Sputnik News. Khalek writes that, and I quote, "By joining the roadblocks around Beirut, the protesters have inadvertently allowed themselves to be used by these U.S. allied parties. Whether they know it or not, the media-friendly artists and students at the Ring Road in downtown Beirut have given cover to the Lebanese forces roadblocks in the north and the Progressive Socialist Party and future party roadblocks in the south." As you could see this tweet here, who decides which protests are worthy/unworthy and why? It's all about location. Protest against a government in the U.S. and you'll get the hero treatment in U.S. media. But protest against a U.S. ally and you're a rioter. And then she posted one of her videos. Anderson lashed out against the article, calling the Gray Zone a conspiracy theorist website worthy of Google's power-hungry censorship. And you could see this post right here. It says, can someone tell me why this piece on a conspiracy theorist website written by a woman who parachuted into Beirut to spread sectarian propaganda and now pretends to be native shows up on the first page of Google News search about the Lebanon protests? I know, it's how terrible that the algorithm actually works in someone's favor for once, whether or not you agree with her. Anderson describes the piece as dangerous and demands to know the criteria for Google News searches, so this article cannot be read. As she says, this is dangerous disinformation that could get protesters in Lebanon killed. There are clashes almost every day between people who propagate these theories and demonstrators rallying against corruption. Now, people always utilize the idea of danger. Like there's some web that connects it with the possibility or the plausibility of someone getting hurt. You know, news isn't always positive for everyone. Sometimes it's negative. Whether you agree with the positive or the negative, it doesn't matter. It's speech. You're carrying on information from one person to another. That's it. It's a voluntary agreement that I'm writing this, you're going to read it, or you don't read it and we don't shake hands on it. That's it. And it plays into the cancel culture. It plays into the offense culture, the trigger culture, the baby culture that we're seeing among so many adults on the left today and on the right too, because you know there's lots of people that don't want people to be able to speak their mind on the right as well. But it's more on the left than anything. But it's all this collectivism cult anyway. But I can't help but notice that this plays into so much of what we're seeing right now as far as you know, people are trying to spread news and spread, information like we saw with, for example, the Afghanistan papers recently that showed that the U.S. lied for all those years about the Afghanistan war, which spent trillions of dollars and killed thousands of people and destroyed a country and made it a hotbed for terrorism that they armed and funded in the first place. And then on top of that, we also have papers that have come out recently that also the media hasn't been talking about regarding a dossier that was glorified by the U.S. government to make people agree with going and attacking Syria. And it showed that they had no evidence that Assad gassed his own people, and there's doubt, and they just went along with it in order to basically utilize it like a false flag in order to go in and attack Syria. No one's talking about that either. These are some of the biggest stories of the century. Or the example of these men, women, and children getting killed by the drone strike in Iraq that Wikileaks simply shared for the public to know, and they should know. What happened to transparency of information anyway? People say, well, I could have gotten people killed. There's no evidence that anyone was killed. It's all just a talking point. And again, this woman's using it as a talking point. Well, someone might get killed. It's absurd. That isn't an excuse for not spreading truthful information online. And the media has been covering up for this kind of stuff. The media has been covering up for these warmongers. The media has been covering up for all these stories regarding Assange and Epstein and, Jimmy Savile and, Snowden and all these people. And I'm just so sick of people just looking the other way on this, because this is an example of the media being implicit or complicit in mass murder by the government, by governments around the world. Mass murder. They talk about chemical attack in Syria that Assad, there's no evidence that he actually did. They said, he killed all these people. The U.S. government killed millions of people, millions, hundreds of thousands of children. And why is that? That's okay, and that shouldn't be considered terrorism, spreading an idea by fear and force. That's just, collateral damage. Think of the mental gymnastics of these sick psychopaths. Think of it. Now, I have to add that at the same time as you see this woman talking about, delisting things on Google and all that kind of stuff, we have to remember that with COPPA legislation now, if you say that your video is for children, you get all your views taken away for the most part. It won't get suggested anymore. We're already shadow banned, and it'll take out comments on the video. And if you say it's not for kids, you can very likely be fined $42,000 a person on YouTube. This video is not for children, by the way. And on top of that, they changed the term of service, so you can't, actually attack someone for their identity or their ideas. You can't criticize people, so your account could just be deleted like a modern-day bookboarding. Susan Wojcicki from YouTube just said that she has cut down controversial content views by 70%. We've been saying since February that we've been cut down 80%, so only 10% of you are just bored with watching us. The rest, it's 90% of the views that we've lost this year have been due to them literally shadow banning us. They used to say they didn't do it, just same with Twitter, and now both of them say in their terms of service that they're doing it. Susan Wojcicki says we're doing it under the guise of free expression. Imagine those mental gymnastics too. Free speech is dying fast, folks, and it will completely die if you don't do anything about it today. These massive pedophile rings, these wars, the destruction of the currency, the perpetual ideals of the Hegelian dialectic or problem reaction solution under the state to come in and create more problems to solve it's all about making slaves out of you. That's all the goal at the end of the day, and the media will bow down to the establishment as much as they humanly can. But all you hear about in the news right now is impeachment. It's just a circus. It's bread and circuses for the masses, and they're desensitizing people. They're creating degenerates. They're destroying the world and making this into the book of Revelations. And what are people doing about it? What are you doing about it? Use your demand. Support independent media, support other, it doesn't have to be me, it's someone else. I mean, they're literally shutting down our channel. They cut us down 80% this year and 90% financially. And there's those of you that are doing something about it that I thank God for. People like you are changing the world, but we will see more wars. We will see more collusion. We will see more destruction of free will if we don't save independent media, because it's the information that educates the populace to actually take a stance against this kind of stuff, and support people like Julian Assange, and support people like Edward Snowden and Chelsea Manning, and support the information coming out regarding Epstein and the royal family and all these politicians and presidents and child rape rings. I mean, come on. I mean, shouldn't that be at the top of the news? These lies regarding the war, which the independent media spoke out about years ago and called it a lie. The independent media, on the day of the so-called chemical attack, I was calling it a lie. And 3 days before the first Syrian chemical attack alleged, I spoke out and I said that they were going to stage a false flag attack because Rex Tillerson said that he had no reason to go against Assange anymore and they wanted to work together. 3 days later, boom. And then 1 year to the day later, the president says we plan on working with Assad. And then here we go, 3 days later, boom. And it's just like, it's so obvious at this point and people are onto it, but knowing about it and taking action regarding it and knowing what to do as far as action is two different things. So again, with all this tech censorship and all this destruction of free will and free speech, go to flote.app, flote.app. We post there more than anywhere else, and we do videos that are exclusive to Flote, not safe for YouTube content, because YouTube isn't allowing us to talk about anything anymore, and we're not going to sacrifice all our messages just for one. It's important that we get all of our messages out. We're also on BitChute. Just find us there. Follow us on all these other, even if it's all these old guard platforms like Instagram and Twitter and all these other things. Follow us and get backed up as much as you can, because we will be ripped to shreds very soon. And check us out on Subscribestar, where we do subscriber-only content at $5 a tier up and a month, and Patreon as well, and GoFundMe and all that stuff below, Bitcoin addresses, all that. We need your help, folks. It's the end of free speech if we don't do something now. Speak now or forever hold your peace, because we will soon be in a world where we won't want to live anymore, and there will be no escape. It'll be a prison planet, and we need to speak out today, not tomorrow, today. Anyway, I appreciate everyone joining us. Please spread the information about Julian Assange. Get the hashtag going, hashtag free Assange. Post this under Free Assange on all the social medias, hashtag Free Assange, and write below so I can know that you're watching, and it might help the algorithm a little bit as we're getting shadow banned here at Wham, and write Free Assange below the video as well in the comments. I appreciate you guys joining us. Until next time, check this outro coming up. This is Josh Sigurdson signing out from World Alternative Media. Find the truth, be the change. Like what you see here at Wham, don't forget to check the links below. GoFundMe, Patreon. We cannot do it without you guys. Every donation is extremely, extremely appreciated, as we're getting incredibly shadow banned. We've lost 80% of our audience since January of 2019 and counting. They are ripping us apart here on YouTube, and the only thing we could do in the meantime as we prepare for the next big step is to ask for help from the viewers that support our free information that we try to post on a daily basis. You can also find us on Subscribestar, where just $1 a month, that's all it takes, $1 a month is all it takes to truly make a huge difference. If everyone gave $1 a month, it would change everything for independent media, and we could win this information war, and we could defeat the mainstream medias eventually. And of course, on Subscribestar, we post subscriber-only content that you'll only see on Subscribestar. So make sure to pledge there, become a Patreon. That makes a huge difference, guys. And also, don't forget to check out our Bitcoin address below in the comments and description, as well as on the screen for you to scan, if you please. And also, don't forget to subscribe to us on the alternatives. We will likely be deleted by YouTube in the next 2 years. It's already happening on a vast scale, so make sure to find us on float.app. That's flote.app. At Josh Sigurdson, as well as at WAM, W-A-M. Float.app is replacing every social media, and I mean, it's just incredible the opportunities it provides for not just creators, but for the average person who wants to get away from these nannies telling them what they can or cannot see. They plan to replace Facebook, Twitter, YouTube, Twitch, Tumblr, Reddit, and Patreon. You could subscribe to us on Float and pledge with cryptocurrency. It's really innovative. We are also on BitChute at World Alternative Media, as well as so many others, Minds, PocketNet. You can find us at World Alternative Media on Instagram. There's many options. And finally, don't forget to join us at Anarchapulco 2020, the famous event, the best liberty event known to mankind, other than perhaps Anarcho Vegas 2020. There are 2 major events coming up that we are extremely excited about, and you can use promo code WAM, that's W-A-M, and save 10% on your tickets to these legendary conferences. There's so many amazing people speaking there. You won't want to miss it. So make sure to support in any way you can, even if it's just sharing our videos, pressing like, pressing to be notified. Anything helps, folks. You are the change you wish to see. Thanks for watching, everyone. And until next time, this is Josh Sigurdson signing out from World Alternative Media. Find the truth, be the change.
I'm sure you have already changed people's minds in your young age because you're involved, and I like that.